This is Zach Log the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate.
Guten Tag.
And also with Travis.
Hello.
And we are getting together tonight to talk about Robert W. Service's poem, Dirt. Before we get to that, as usual, I want to mention if you like my work, if you would like to help me keep doing more of this, you can support me at subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great. And having said that, Nate has volunteered to read the poem for us. So I am going to get that up on the screen as soon as I find it. Yeah, that's it. And we will put this up on we will get this moving. So let me know when you guys see that.
I see it.
I see that the screen is white. That bad racist screen. But getting back to the poem. All right. He can see it. I can tell that you're on a different screen, so I think we're okay.
Okay.
So, Dirt by Robert Service. Dirt is just matter out of place, so scientists aver. But when I see a miner's face, I wonder if they err. For grit and grime and grease may be, in God's constructive plan, a symbol of nobility, the measure of a man. There's naught so clean as honest dirt, so of its worth I sing. I value more an oily shirt than garment of a king. There's naught so proud as honest sweat, and though it stink we cuss, we kid-glove chaps are in the debt of those who sweat for us. It's dirt and sweat that makes us folks proud as we are today. We owe our wealth to weary blokes, fouled by soot and clay. And where you see a belly fat, a dozen more are lean. By God, I'd sooner doff my hat to washerwife than queen. So here's a song to dirt and sweat, a grace to grit and grime, a hail to workers all who beat the wonders of our time. And as they gaze through gutter girt to palaces enskied, let them believe by sweat and dirt they too are glorified.
Okay. Thank you, Nate. And let me get that. I did not notice until just now, because I got this from another. I think there's an error in the last stanza. Hail to workers who beget, but anyway, close enough. Travis, it rather does, and rhymes better.
Mm-hmm.
So, Travis,
were you asking me if?
Yeah,
sure, I can start out here. I mean, I enjoyed the poem. As we mentioned before we started the video, I grew up on a farm. I grew up sweating and being in dirt. I guess the line that's sticking out to me right now is it's dirt and sweat that makes us folks proud as we are today. I think that's an interesting line because there's a lot of ugliness in being human. There's a lot of blood and sweat and dirt in general, just being human, being a part of this world and the earth that's in it. And the idea that, from the earth we come and to the earth we return, those kinds of ideas definitely play well into this story. Yeah, I'll start with that and see what somebody else has to offer.
So, one thing I was thinking when I was doing this poem is like, I haven't done one before where I so specifically wanted a particular person that's just not going to be joining us, because I was looking, I was like, man, if I could by any means get Mike Rowe into this conversation, I really think he would like this poem. Travis, I don't know. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, he also he worked with Bill Gates and created a software company as well. And it became Microsoft. But
Right.
All right.
No.
Bye.
No, he didn't do that. But he has had, I don't think it's going right now. He had a TV show going for a good while called Dirty Jobs.
I've heard of it.
And yeah, and so basically the entire point of it is, um, taking time to look at, these dirty, messy, smelly jobs that, don't get a lot of glory, but that all of us are probably glad someone else is doing. And he also talks about talks a good bit today about, like, we tell all these kids to go to college, and then they go to college, and we don't have that many jobs for people with this or that college degree. Maybe we should have the kids go and study being an electrician or a plumber or a skilled carpenter. And there would be a lot more opportunities for some of them, and that might be a better plan.
And generally a lot less debt. Yeah, he's a big proponent of trades at trade schools, trade education. He actually has a program where he sends people to on scholarships. Doesn't have a whole lot to do with the poem, but he is a great dude. Love me some Mike Rowe. And he's a genuinely, seems like a genuinely humble and just kind of funny guy.
And so, like, yeah, just in sense of, there's these people who do these things that keep our lives running, and, maybe they should get a nod once in a while. I think this poem would be right down his alley. So, Nate, you have not really had your say yet.
Oh, I really like when he says there's not so clean as honest dirt. Because, you figure the guy that comes out of somewhere, just grimy and sweaty, and he smells like, 30 yards of rotten death. He earned his money, honestly. He wasn't in there cheating someone. He wasn't swindling or, making moves. He was in there doing something physically difficult and unpleasant. And yeah, he's getting paid for that. That's where his bread comes from. He's not cheating grandma out of her mortgage or something.
And I like that. Sorry, you go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
And so, no, that's all I had to say on that point. I was just going to say it with more words.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's fitting along the lines of how you're, reading that the next line is, I value more an oily shirt than garment of a king, so it's kind of, kings are often sold as, rats taking advantage of others. So that kind of contrast between, okay. But I have thought about it. Like there's more than one kind of dirt, so to speak. Like this poem's mostly speaking of actual dirt from mining or farming or whatever that may be. But when he brings this, he does sort of bring in the concept of there being this other kind of sort of a dishonest dirt or a compromised dirt, or whenever you get into some of those jobs or positions or leadership roles, things start to get a little murky and dirty as far as how you should be making choices. I suppose.
Yeah, the honest man carries his dirt on the outside.
Right.
The scoundrel carries his dirt under a nice white crisp cravat.
Yeah.
Well, no, honestly, like I said, I feel like this, liking this poem and talking about is a little self-serving of me because, yeah, I come home stinky and dirty every day, but hey, you know, we
What
were,
do you work at right now?
I am an AC technician. I crawl attics and dusty closets. It's not so bad, and now that things have cooled off, but in the summer, man, like, hey, this
Yeah.
has 132 degrees. It'll kill me in 10 minutes. I better make sure I'm only up here for 9.5.
Uh, yep, good to know those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to admit, like I've although I've not lived some kind of rich rich life of privilege. I've also never really really been in one of these uh you know or at least not for not for more than a couple of weeks. I've never really been in one of these kind of jobs. But I have worked some difficult, unpleasant jobs, but not down to the level of minor, definitely, or probably not even to the level of of AC repair. And so um, my my view of this is a little more distant, probably, than either of you. Um, and it is kind of strange also because it's for me personally, obviously, I'm pretty proud of my intellect and my way with words, um, and so that's also what I am inclined to admire. But then I look at this and I'm like, yeah, I mean, we could pretty much get along without many, if any, people like me, but we couldn't really get along without someone digging digging black rocks out of the ground that we're gonna burn, or cutting down trees, or doing any of 100 other jobs that someone in my kind of job in some sense tends to look down on. And uh, it's a really strange thing. It's odd to contemplate the kind of contradictions in our society with that kind of thing.
Well, I mean that king's garment isn't going to get made with a bunch of dudes out there growing flax to make linen out of. You know, every fine item that exists, every luxury thing, has a long train of, freaking sweaty dudes out there with greasy collars going, "Yep, well, I got it done for today. Time for a beer."
Yeah, and
And
his third stanza sort of goes into that. It's dirt and sweat that makes us folks proud as we are today. We owe our wealth to weary blokes befouled by soot and clay.
And where you see a belly fat, he's probably working on your plumbing.
Well, there is that stereotype.
it's that is it's also an interesting change in the expectations of different things. Like today, if you see someone slim and slim and tanned, they're probably rich and have plenty of luxury time. Whereas if you see someone whereas go ahead.
Uniformly tanned, anyway.
Yes, if they're tanned from the elbow down, that's a slightly different thing.
Yeah, I mean,
A friend once told me that my brother and I had the best tans in Franklin County one summer.
Nice. My question though is,
Because
have you ever had the multi-layered farmer's tan? because I had tan lines going up my arm in various stages of, tanning from like, early, like in kind of late spring when it started to warm up and I put my short sleeves on to, to sort of a middle short sleeve to a mostly cut off to a full cut off shirt. And so I had this graduation of stuff right up until my shirt, like right up until the middle of my shoulder. People were like, my man, you got to even that out. You look weird.
No, I've never done that. I just stuck with the t-shirt and then rolling the t-shirt up to the shoulder, and then when the sun was too much, then you'd roll it back down so you didn't get burnt on that middle section, so it kind of tanned in. Or you'd take the shirt all the way off. That's the way we went. Whenever you're on the tractor was the prime time tan time.
Oh yeah.
Obviously when you're working in like real legit dirt, then you've got the t-shirt on and you're just getting what you get.
You know it. Oh man. But no, like that was hilarious. I was like, yeah, I've got 5 different layers of tan here. And then I looked down at my knees and I'd burn them purple canoeing, like purple. That was bad. My shorts hung down past my knees, like my swim trunk hung down past my knees when I was standing, so I thought it was okay. I wasn't paying attention to it. But it's like high summer down here, and so like the UV index is off the charts, and so I didn't realize it had pulled up just over the joint of my knees and was sitting like right where my femur ends basically. And so like my kneecaps and just the top curve of my knee were out, and I said that burned them purple.
That does not sound pleasant.
My man, I just about turned into a nudist for a while because I was like, I can't put on pants, guy. It hurt.
Not good.
Not good. Oh, but I mean, there is that about manual sort of physical labor that is ennobling, and it really, the old salts aren't lying to you. It builds character because you can't escape the suck. It sucks, but if you do it and you can commit to doing it the right way, then you learn to, bear up under adverse circumstances, and you end up, it says it hardens you up. It makes you more fit to do things that are not so difficult, and it makes you appreciate those things. So
well, and that's how do you get strong? By doing hard things. Like that's it. And I actually was I have a video relative like somewhat on this topic, but like I when I was in high school I was very much a a nerd, relatively on the small side, and not by any means physically imposing or anything. And I started cross country in 9th grade, and I was terrible my first year. By the 3rd year, by my senior year, I had made it up to like not bad basically, but I started out absolutely terrible. And I'm still, doing not still. I'm again doing distance running today because didn't the whole time, there were several years where I didn't. But I don't think I really thought about it at the time. But in fact, I don't. I definitely didn't think about it at the time. But like looking back, I can definitely see that that kind of thing is not nearly the same thing. I think it's voluntary. No one's making you go out and do it. But at the same time, I think that kind of thing was, good for me, psychologically. Because I mean, the thing with people like me, it's really easy for us to get stuck in our own heads, and to get very involved in ideas and words, and the thing with those is it's really easy to make things seem like you want them to be. And, it's really easy to, in any given argument, to come away, well, obviously I was right. Obviously I had the better points. And you can always spin that to, make yourself the, winner. But, for instance, with, distance running or, any other, physical sport, you win or you lose, you cross the finish line first, second, third, 10th, whatever. You get the ball across the goal line, or you don't. And there's not really that much room to make it the way you want it to be. You're up against hard physical reality, and it's a little bit the same kind of thing, and it is good for people. And I think, people like me, very intellectual, you need to do something that's gonna run you up against the solid world. Do distance running, lift. Go ahead.
It's the same way. So it's the same way with physical work, and it's actually, I think, even more so because you can maybe have a sneaking suspicion that somebody cheated, or there's an unfair advantage to be had somewhere if you really want to whine about it. But when it comes down to it, the feed sacks aren't taking any action against you. They're just heavy. If that log don't
it's
split,
gravity. It's gravity that's out to get you.
Yeah, that's it. If the log don't split, it's because you didn't hit it either hard enough or correctly. And so, I mean, you just got to kind of look at it and be like, oh, well, crap, I failed. Okay. Better swing this splitting maul again, or, all right, got to keep on stacking. That feed ain't going to move itself. And so, it's, even less of a tractable thing, because it's like, no, these are dumb objects, but I've just got to get them going. That hole ain't gonna appear.
Yeah, I mean, the engine runs or it doesn't. The chair you built either holds up when someone sits down, or it falls apart. And there's no way of getting around this hard result. And so, if like I said, if you're someone like me, kind of, and I kind of think that's part of why a lot of people are going insane in some ways today, because they're not doing anything that runs you up against just solid, doesn't give a crap about your excuses reality. And I think we kind of need that sometimes.
No, a tangible result is extremely important. Like, the most unsatisfying thing in the world is to work your butt off day after day and never see what comes of it. That's what I did in the Air Force, is I'd be like, okay, I have pushed 1,000 documents this month. Cool. You know what's in my it's in my inbox? 1,000 more documents. Neat. So, I'm here I am, just a little rock in the stream as the paperwork goes by. And I'm just like, bruh, this is the least satisfying crap in the world. I mean, at least, when I was working at the ranch, I could be out there getting heat stroke over a weed eater. But when I look around, hey, look at that. Everything's nice and trimmed up. I have to spend 15 minutes going in circles beating on a thoroughbred, but, well, he's in the stall now and fed, so that's good.
Yeah, there's great reward in the solid world of, just like you're saying, whether, the fence line's clean or the horse is in the stable. I think experiencing that sense of success, so to speak, like I can see what I've done, is one reward. And then the physical labor itself, if you're healthy and feeling good, is another reward, because, you you feel tired at the end of the day, and you feel strong from that work as well.
Strong like bear.
Man, look, me and Tim hucked a 250-pound evaporator coil. Just grabbed on the bottom of it and just literally chunked it up through a hole in a ceiling, and where two other guys basically they grabbed it coming up and pulled it up through the floor and set it down. I was like, dang, and man, inflict with muscle. Do it with brute force and ignorance. Who needs
I do have to suggest, though, once your body starts to leave you, block and tackles and subjects of that sort, they start to make some sense.
Bah, it's for women's.
Yeah, exactly.
Or also just, very good body mechanics is a good start, at least. Lift with knees, not with back.
Yeah. I believe in putting back into the mattress, not the lift. But Travis is absolutely right. It feels good sometimes to just honestly grunt and shift and get it taken care of. Because like I said, it's a simple calculation. I always say, I compare some problems in life to similar things. Like people are, oh gosh, how am I going to do this? And I'm like, oh, it's very simple how you're going to do it. How am I going to quit being this way? Well, it's very simple. Quit being that way. When you feel like you want to be that way, don't. And I'm like, but I was like, no, I never said it's going to be easy. I mean, lifting a 2-ton rock is very simple. You apply enough force to the bottom of it and it'll lift. Is it easy? No. It's just simple. But sometimes doing those simple, difficult tasks it's extremely rewarding. I think that's why guys like to throw, heavy objects off of things and listen to them hit the ground. Like, yeah, you could hear how heavy that was.
That's actually, there's a toy we got for one of my kids maybe even a year ago. I don't know how long this thing has been, floating around the house. And it's this action figure guy, and when you hit a certain spot, he makes a roar. But most of him is just made out of this. Don't know what it's some kind of plastic, and it you can stretch it and pull it, and it slowly slides back into shape. And it's the weirdest thing because just the feeling of pulling on this thing and the amount of resistance it has, there is something very satisfying about just pulling this thing apart and then letting it go back and then doing it again. It's a very strange, it's a strange thing to get any kind of pleasure out of, but it's real. And
same kind of drawing a bow. You're like, it's like, oh man, I'm putting my effort into this, but I'm going to skewer the hell out of that with my own force. Yeah, I missed.
So on the side of practical application, but rather less on the side of masculinity and big strong man. I have several. It's been a while, but I have several times made and canned homemade jam. And I don't know what it is about it, but when I pull those jars out of the hot water where they get sealed, and what's the term? Sterilized.
Mm-hmm.
For a long-term storage. When I pull those out and set them on the counter and look at them, I do not know anything else I have done that in that moment hits the "I've accomplished something" button in my head quite that hard. It's just this intense feeling of satisfaction every time I've done that. It's kind of odd.
Well, there's some work. There's some work involved in making that happen.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, the result. I have made this. This is a thing I did with my own hands. It wasn't like this before. It is like this now. It is an improvement.
I kind of suspect that like food preservation, like there's, like I said, it's a really strong feeling. I'm like, I don't know, like, I'm from Europe. We had to get through winter. Is there like some actual like genetic like food preservation is a good thing to do?
I'm sure there's probably synapses bouncing off of that. But I mean, it's the same way. I mean, because I mean, there's a very real drive in us, to get ready for winter. For those who are actually connected to that, like, oh, I've got to get firewood to heat the house, or like, I grew up with my mom canning and with us getting firewood, and so it's like today, the majority of people don't even know what it means, the idea of getting ready for winter. For them, it's merely an emotional idea of, oh, I got to get ready for the cold. Because everybody's a pansy and can't handle weather either direction. And there's a reason for that, too. It's because, I don't know if you guys have heard about the Wim Hof guy, but he's this, I think, Dutch guy that, like, climbs a mountain in his shorts. Like, he hangs out in cold water, and he's basically trained his body to be able to do things in higher temperatures. And it's supposed to be really good for your circulation and like whatever to do this. But basically, we've learned to exist at 72 degrees. And because we're not, it's sort of the same idea of, if you don't have to dig holes every day to survive, you just lie around and everything's soft. If you're stuck at 70 degrees every day and it never changes, asking you to go out into 100 degrees or 30 degrees is like, oh man, I can't handle that. So he's basically, whatever there's a term in therapy, exposure therapy, teaching your body to actually live to its potential, of what it can handle as far as extremes of temperature. So I mean, I think people are more pansies today, to use that word, regarding weather than they probably used to be. And I think people have always used the weather as a thing to complain about, as a source of their problems.
And Nate, considering you work in heating and air conditioning, this is all your fault.
Look,
funny.
we always tell people, all right, their fathers were right. Stop leaving the daggum door open. You're air conditioning the outside. It's just that it all has to collect up around the South Pole and then swing back north. That's why it takes a while after summer to get back up here. But then it gets really cold because all you idiots let all the cold out. You daggum kids and women just letting all the cold out. So then start trying to warm everything up, and what do? You let the warm out. Then it all comes back in July. So, hey, as a father and an AC guy, I wash my hands many times a day because they're covered in fiberglass and attic dust. But
oh, let's see. Yeah, I have to say, like, this is the book. The Best of Robert Service. And I'm about a little over halfway through it yet. And I'm pretty impressed so far. He reminds me a good bit of Rudyard Kipling at some points. Because it's very it's a very down to earth, day-to-day practical kind of verse. And at the same time, it is. I remember I talked about at least one of the poems we did before. I said there's not a lot of complexity here, and I wouldn't say that about Service. And so, like, it's definitely I would definitely call this actual art, and at the same time, it is very down to earth, day to day kind of thing, that's a difficult balance to strike.
It's like a good loaf of bread. It's definitely an art, but it's just like that. It's simple. It's wholesome. It doesn't have to be, a bunch of, spun sugar and edible glitter. It's just, hey, here's a good solid thing. Take it with you. And so, yeah, I kind of prefer poetry like this, like, things that are like, ooh, that's a clever turn of phrase. No, this doesn't really do that too much. It's just like, yep, going to say something down to earth and straightforward. I'm going to say it in a down to earth, straightforward way. And you can, either find the beauty in it or be stupid.
It reminds me of, I think it was actually a joke, but there's a commercial I saw on YouTube for like a guy selling, who like builds mobile homes. Do you know the one Nate, did you ever see that one I'm talking about? Like, buy them or don't.
Nope.
Huh. Okay. Well, I'll have to see if I can find that one possibly after, although I can't work it in here. But yeah, it's just like, this is what, like I said, there is a degree of art here I don't usually see in Edgar Guest. But at the same time, they are both calm, down to earth, everyday kind of thing. One thing that was kind of frustrating about this, when I was looking for this online, I only found one place where this poem exists online, or at least so far. I found a lot of people quoting the first line, "Dirt is just matter out of place, Robert Service," and I'm like, no, that's not remotely like the degree of out of context that you have this is painful.
I've said this, I think, about a different poem. It might have been another Robert Service poem, but it was about a similar kind of thing. And this is a nice turkey sandwich of a poem. Again, art doesn't have to be fancy. And things that nourish you don't have to be, out on the fringes. And this, like I said,
thank God, or I'd starve.
No kidding. Like this is a good turkey sandwich poem. It's like, there you go. Simple, wholesome, good. And you know what? Just because I like it, I'll say it's turkey sandwich with chips.
Well, and I actually remember G.K. Chesterton, talking about that at some point. He's like, and people say, oh, these, and this was early 20th century, so they didn't have TV yet. Thank God. I kind of sometimes wish we didn't. But he was talking about like
three more kids.
What's that?
I'd probably have like 3 more kids.
I have heard that people who don't have people who have television in their bedrooms are rather less active in some ways. Couples that have televisions in their bedrooms, anyway, that was a jump. But there was I remember G.K. Chesterton saying like people complain about the lower classes and they read this terrible cheap pulp fiction and it's not art, and it's like, look, they've got to have stories. They are going to have stories, okay? And they're probably not going to like the kind of stories that you think they should have, okay? But they're going to have stories. And so, for God's sake, let them enjoy the stories that they have instead of trying to hammer them into the kind of stories that you want them to have. And I feel a lot. I kind of feel the same way about poetry, except these days it kind of seems like that battle is lost, and most everyday people don't really have poetry, and I think something's gone wrong there. And because
I would say for most people, their poetry is probably music, the lyrics of their music.
there is that. It's not because it's not quite the same,
Labels
and
are
like
not the same.
Well, it's not
Yeah.
quite the same, but you realize you're saying exactly what this person said about the lower classes form of stories not being literature. I mean, really, in this statement, you're saying the people's music, that being their poetry. I'm not saying it doesn't line up exactly, but there's a certain parallel there of you're saying, well, their poetry, it's not cool enough.
well, and
or
it's
they're
not.
not getting enough from it, or whatever it is that's there.
No, all I'm saying is that, lyrics and verse they're cousins, but they're not the same thing. Because I mean, I'm sure back in back when Chesterton was talking about that, is they probably had a similar conversation going on about the lower class music and how just outrageously improperly they play their violins, but and then the lower class folks are sneering at these folks who don't even know how to fiddle right. But like I said, musical lyrics and poetry are just, like I said, they're similar, but they're not the same thing. And so it's not about sneering at the quality of it, saying, oh, they should like better stuff, although frankly. But no, I really think that there's a lot of people that don't get verse. They get plenty of lyrics, they don't get verse.
Well,
Yeah,
for that
and like,
matter, just look at modern poetry. Most of it's not verse. It's whatever modern thing that it is.
That's
so,
word barf is what that is.
well, and it's well, and I think that's also it's part of the same thing. And part of what I'm talking about here is like you look at Edgar Guest, Only a Dad. Or what's the guy? Shoot, something Cook. Who Edmund Vance Cook. And like the poems they wrote were like in newspapers or published in like Reader's Digest kind of things, like things that ordinary everyday people are going to pick up and read, and maybe if they really like it they'll clip it out and like stick it up on a bulletin board. And and you look back, and it was actually one thing kind of interesting for me to realize when I started doing this, because if you look back, starting like somewhere around probably the early 20th century, it's a pretty safe bet that if someone wrote stories or wrote significant length books of any kind, they probably also wrote poetry. They may not have been a great poet. In fact, by definition, most of them weren't. But they, wrote poetry, and you can find it. Whereas today, the only people who, write poetry or write much of it are people who they are poets. Period. That's what they do, and it's like it's a kind of specialization, compartmentalization, and I don't think it's a healthy one. Actually, it reminds me of a. Let's see if I can find that Heinlein quote.
Essentially, leave specialization to ants.
Yes, real man should.
Real man should be able to write a poem, fight a lion, fight a war, and raise a baby or something like that.
Yeah, here, wait. I have it. Let me see if I can bring up the whole thing. Arg. Out of the way. A human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch a manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects. And yet that is very much the opposite of what today is. And I don't know if you have to be able to do the whole list, but that's a good start. And it's I don't think
you're probably a D&D ranger. But I mean, there's nothing on that list that is, unworthy. So yeah, there also be things that you should at least not be completely hopeless at.
I don't know, the computer programming one.
Well, things are a little different then. You should still be able to be master of your own systems, He says, not being a very great master of his own systems. I mean, hey, my hard drive went kaput, and I put 2 new ones in its place.
That's pretty good. That's more than a majority of the population would do.
That actually reminds me. Do I have that? Where is that? Oh, there it is. Crud. 1 moment. Of a Neil Stevenson book, I would recommend, which, unlike most of his, is less than 1,000 pages. In the beginning was the command line, and it's about computer programming, and surprisingly, goes afield in human culture and a number of other things. It's pretty fascinating, but he talks about learning to work on a machine where you're not just have an operating system that's rearranging everything for you, and how it's good to be able to learn how those things work and and fit together, and a very abstract form of the same idea.
Yep,
sounds good.
We have within ourselves and in our minds untold capacity for learning. It's just that through long effort, we have learned to deaden that and to, just be like, oh, this is probably too complex for me. I don't think I can do this. I mean, they have whole schools for people to do this, so there's no way I could do it. But honestly, I've gained a lot more confidence to work on other stuff, just in general, since I have gotten my AC certification, because now I'm having to go in there and be like, well, I have to pull this thing apart now. I have a pretty good idea of what's not working, and it's behind all that crap. So give me my drill. Let's do it. And so now I look at things, I'm like, yeah, I could pull that apart. I know how to test electrical circuits now. I could pull this thing apart, figure out where the break is, and maybe fix it. And then hopefully put it all back together right. But
I was going to say, putting it back together is always the trickiest part.
We have cell phones. They have cameras. Just take pictures. If you're like, oh, yeah, this is complicated. Yeah. It's the problem is that whenever you think, oh, that's not that complex, I can remember that. And then you get back to it and you're like, ooh. How many things can take to get the center of this Tootsie Pop?
And then you spend 10 hours trying to find the right YouTube video that tells you the thing that you need to know.
Preferably without
you just end up spending 45 minutes to an hour piecing together the edges of photos. And you're like, wait, hold on. I can see that part. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. The worst. Because they skip the part that you're looking for. Oh, man.
Got to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
Deduce things and figure them out.
Okay, well, we are at about 50 minutes. I think I covered most of what I wanted to say here. Travis, how about you? Any last thoughts on this
Yeah,
one?
I think for me, like I'm looking at the end there, he says these workers as they gaze through gutter girt to palaces and sky, let them believe by sweat and dirt they too are glorified. And I think that's a fitting way to end it, because a lot of time people working in the dirt think they're less than the people, with money or, an easier life, or they're always looking for that, to have what those other people have. And so having grown up in it, I find a lot of nobility in work, hard work and dirt and bad weather. And I think you were mentioning earlier that whoever that guy was that does the dirty jobs, and like kids today, like trying to encourage them to go to trade schools or whatever. I mean, there has been a shifting paradigm, and to a large extent, I think we've spent a generation or two basically telling kids that, oh, you can do whatever you want, which wasn't really all that practical, it turns out. So starting to look, back at hard. Well, we're even on the college level, we're doing it. We're all saying, oh, science and math, and we're pushing that. But even with that, we're not necessarily like they were saying, looking at the trades or whatever. That was kind of a tangent. I was on the poem and then I left the poem. Now, if I was awesome, I would wrap it back around to the poem somehow, but I'm not awesome. So we'll move on and let Nate tie it all together.
If you're not going to wrap it around, I'm taking off for the panhandle because it struck me earlier. I was thinking about this, and there's another to further draw out the difference between lyric and verse. There's actually a song recently released. I say recently, in the last several years, called "Dirt" by the lyrical luminaries of Florida Georgia Line. But this song actually is pretty good. And it's drawn the comparison of, this is it's like, this is the soil from which you sprang and one day you will be a part of again. Or, you came from it and one day you'll return to it. But it talks about all the things in life that are tied to the earth. And, I like how home takes that kind of earthy life. And like I said, it does try and give it its proper nobility, its dignity. Because, just because something smells a bit doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I mean, more crap, more tomatoes. But, and just because something smells nice doesn't mean it's useful. You ever tried to drive a nail with a rose? So, I said, I love these connections to down to earth things because, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time, to borrow a phrase from Death Worlders, sky thinking and just being like, oh, the great beyond out there. And I still think about that stuff. Sure. But I've come to value sort of, this artificially raised idea and these things that people tend to want to ascribe high status to. I'm like, you can put it on a pedestal, sure. Whatever you want. But does it deserve to be there? And so I've really come to an appreciation when I was working white collar for the government that, you know what? Sometimes swinging a hammer, most times swinging a hammer, stabbing with your shovel, doing those kind of things, it's more meaningful. And it's just, it's better for the soul. And so I love this little turkey sandwich of a poem here. I could eat it every day.
So yeah, and there's this tendency in our society today. We idolize movie stars, and you know we financially reward people who can make numbers do funny dances on a computer. Sometimes those are very funny dances um, that probably shouldn't be happening. But
Frog.
none of us are gonna you know at the end of the day, we need someone to go out there, dig up the coal. We need some people to drive around on that really smelly truck and cart away stuff that we definitely don't want anymore. We need people to come into our house once in a while and sort out pipes that aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And
Fry up
you
our
know,
meatish products.
and maybe we should give a little more credit and a little more honor, to those kind of people. And because our life, if you want to go all "It's a Wonderful Life" on it, our lives would be a lot worse without people doing those. So, okay, well, thank you both for joining me tonight. Thanks to Robert W. Service for writing this, and I hope that we get a chance to talk about several of his other poems in the future. This is the first of his I've recorded, but I have a number of other ones marked. And God be with you.
Also with you.
With you.